Welcome to the commentary booth, where we watch and you guessed it, commentate on the week that was in movies and TV. I'm your host and play-by-play commentator Jamie Apps, and each week I'm joined by a rotating cast of colour commentators to help you find your next viewing treat. This week I'm joined by the creator and editor of Hear Us Scream and an all-round horror lover. Welcome to the show, Kat Benstead.
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking about this particular horror.
yeah, loose horror, I guess. Different type of horror.
Very different, yeah.
So before we dive into today's topic, Kat, can you tell us a little bit about your sort of favourite movies, favourite TV shows, and I guess your connection to The Last of Us as well?
Okay, that's a really interesting question, the connection too. So I watch a lot of horror. Lots of TV, lots of movies. I'm more like a slasher body horror fan. So anything where there's lots of blood and guts and stupid limits of your body being pushed, then I'm here for it. However, what I'm not here for is zombies. So The Last of Us is kind of like a game that I've been putting off for a really long time. But yeah, it's been on my PlayStation, loaded, ready to go. I've got like a PS5 now, and like this 4K screen that I could be playing on, and I'm still way too terrified to even touch it. So
yeah, well,
that's my connection to it.
Yeah, especially now that we've got the remake of the original as well. So you've got it in like the best possible version you can play at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a PS5 like enhanced edition. I don't know what they call them. I should know these things.
Yeah, I know there's the original, then there was the remaster, and then they remade it and called it Last of Us Part 1 to tie into Last of Us Part 2.
Because there is Part 2, yes. Which I'd like to get into. I did say to you before, like when you asked me, I was like, oh, I'll play the game. And I've been playing Stray, where you play as like a little cat and you go on adventures and stuff.
Slightly different.
A little bit more wholesome.
Yeah, so before we begin today's topic, we're going on a new sort of diving into a new feature for the commentary booth. Typically we do one new topic each week, but because this is such a monumental show that a lot of people have been waiting for the next 9 weeks, we're going to be focusing on a single topic, diving deep into each individual episode as they air. The topic that we're being infected by, HBO TV adaptation of The Last of Us. So I think it's cool to have you on the show and having not played the game, because I've played all 3 versions of the game, which is a bit ridiculous. And yeah, like I've
no such thing.
Played through Last of Us 1 3 times. Last of Us 2 a full playthrough once, and I got about halfway again on a second playthrough.
Wow.
So I know this topic pretty well.
Committed.
But then you have a different perspective, so I think the show is... It's going to be interesting to see how many people the show is their introduction to it, and then they go back and play the games, or maybe the show is enough for you. So today is episode 1, When You're Lost in the Darkness. Probably should introduce what The Last of Us is itself. It's a post-apocalyptic drama series written by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, based on the 2013 PlayStation game of the same name, which was created by Druckmann and developed by Naughty Dog for PlayStation. In this series, we're set 20 years after modern civilization has been destroyed. Joel, who is a sort of hardened survivor / smuggler, is hired to get 14-year-old girl Ellie out of the quarantine zone in Boston. And what we see starts as a small job, quite quickly becomes this epic journey all across the US. And basically how they survive this crazy journey, where the world has been overrun by a cordyceps fungal infection, which turns people into violent zombie-esque beings.
Yeah.
So you hadn't played the game. What are you thinking of the casting so far with Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie?
I've played 1 hour, thank you very much, of The Last of Us.
Okay, so you played the very heaviest part.
Yeah, yeah. And my brain just went, you know what, that's enough for me. I do really want to play it because so many people talk about it being this cinematic experience. But the casting is fantastic. I'm a massive fan of Pedro Pascal. Loved him in Mandalorian. Absolutely love him in Boba Fett. He's a brilliant actor. And he just gives so much to the character of Joel. And I say that as someone who doesn't really know that much about Joel, but have gotten glimpses of Joel through other people's experiences playing him. And so that's like my, 6 degrees of separation. Like, oh, Joel is this guy because so-and-so on Twitter, talked about him this way. And so it kind of feels like they really hit the nail on the head with casting Pedro Pascal. With Bella Ramsey, I'm really interested to see how she develops as Ellie because I don't know too much about the character of Ellie.
Okay. Yeah, I was initially not sold on either of them, but very quickly they've hooked me in, and now it's kind of hard to see anyone other than Bella Ramsey playing Ellie.
I don't know how I'm going to go, because I don't know, like, with Joel, it just, smack bam, it was sold. I'm sold on straight away. So, yeah, definitely going to have to, like, Bella is fantastic. She's a fantastic actress, but because I'm not too versed, bit of a noob when it comes to The Last of Us, so we'll have to see how she goes. But the rest of the cast is, so far, really, really fantastic.
Yep. And I was looking at some of the interesting tidbits about the two main actors. Apparently, Pedro is getting $600,000 per episode for this show, which is a nice little payday. Make him one of the highest paid American television stars, apparently. So that's
fantastic.
Great little payday for him. What's that? $600,000 over 9 episodes. Not bad.
It's gonna be pretty nice payday.
And apparently, he was a non-gamer. So he hadn't played much of the game like yourself. So he kind of watched little bits and pieces, but tried to keep a healthy distance and just sort of let the showrunners guide him. And I think that has paid off with his performance. And some of the other actors that were initially considered were Hugh Jackman, Michael Fassbender, John Bernthal, Gerard Butler, Josh Brolin, John Hamm, David Harbour, Keanu Reeves even, which is very weird. Chris Hemsworth, probably just for name value.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford, way too old. Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton.
Now, when you throw all those names out there, when you see Pedro Pascal in those opening scenes with his daughter Sarah, you know that that's it. He is the only person who should be playing this role.
Yeah, out of those names, I think the only other one that I would have been okay with would have been Hugh Jackman if he played very similar to like the Logan role.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, I could not see Keanu Reeves running around as Joel. That would have been very strange.
It would have been weird. And also, like, when you see screenshots of Joel from the video game, they are quite similar, like, visually. Like, the way they stand and the way that they speak, and even just their, like, facial features are quite similar. So I think they did a great job casting Pascal in the role.
I saw after the episode aired today, I saw a side-by-side of the really heavy scene with Sarah, and yet when it flashes back between the two Joels, I was like, oh, wow, they actually are very, very close.
Yeah, that opening scene, I was like, oh, I forgot this happens. Oh, thanks. Thanks for the reminder.
Yep. And then Bella Ramsey, I thought she's done a great job of giving us, like, the feisty but funny Ellie as well. Very headstrong, which is pretty much exactly what her character in the game is. It's kind of like this naive girl that doesn't really know the world outside of the quarantine zone, so every little thing she learns is like exciting, but then she also forgets that there's these crazy zombies out there trying to kill everyone.
Yeah, she is very in your face, and I like that. The angsty teen doesn't go away when you go into a quarantine zone, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I guess the moment we're introduced to her in the series, when she's asked to count to 10, 7, 8, fuck you. It's like, okay, well, okay, we're
Brilliant.
right there. Ellie's the way she's supposed to be. Well done.
I'll have to play so I can get to know her character.
Yep.
Because I do want. Everyone loves her so much, so need to dive into it.
And I was looking at sort of her stuff as well. She was aware of the game before she auditioned, but hadn't played it, and she was encouraged not to play it so that she didn't kind of replicate Ashley Birch's performance. So she watched a couple of YouTube videos to get a sense for the game, and then that was it. Other actors considered for this role were Maisie Williams, Elle Fanning, McKenna Grace, Defoe Keane from Logan, and Caitlin Dever. Like I said, after watching this, I can't see anybody else other than Bella Ramsey playing this role.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. The other actresses, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Maisie Williams, that'd be about it.
Yeah, but then we would just get the constant Game of Thrones comparisons, which I guess we got a little bit with Bella, but nowhere near as much as I think we would have got if we got a lead actor from that show.
Yeah, crossover hell, right?
So then on to sort of as the show opened, what did you think of that opening sequence with the 60s talk show with the two scientists?
I actually found that quite satirical in the sense that it's something we're facing now, like these people, giving up all this information about things and hypothetical situations, and it's like, oh crap, we've all just lived through 3 years of a pandemic, and this is what they're talking about. And so it was funny to watch these talking heads, coming up with all these different concepts of what would be the be-all, end-all for for mankind if it did happen. And the fact that he did discuss this fungus, and, once we go more into the episode, we do find out that it, is a parasitic fungus that takes over bodies. And this is what this 60s scientist was discussing. It's kind of like, oh, well, he basically plotted it out for you all.
Yep.
It was well done. It was really well done.
Yeah, I think it sets the tone really well, where it does a great job of introducing the cordyceps without, driving crazy scientific terms at you. It's told in a very, what you would expect on a talk show, layman's terms.
Yeah, and the audience all sitting absolutely in silence. I was like, oh, this is now.
Yep.
And it was kind of like a cool commentary, like not mocking, but, but just
satirizing.
Word. Thank you. Like our current situation that, we've all lived through at the moment.
Yeah, I think this is coming out at the perfect time for this series. 10 years after the original game and right after a crazy pandemic, so very well done. And also, that introduction kind of introduces the idea of perhaps global warming is responsible for this whole situation as well, where fungus has had to adapt to live in higher temperatures, and then that's what makes it be able to live inside humans.
Yeah, a little bit creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, Neil, why did you have to freak me out 10 years ago, and now why are you freaking me out even more with this show? Thank you.
Yeah. Just re-traumatizing you, thanks.
Mm-hmm. And then we got the opening credits. What did you think of how they were designed with the kind of fungal spread leading up to the title card?
Look, it was a classic HBO series title opening. I wouldn't expect anything less than something pretty interesting, with lots of nods to different parts of the series, and it kind of shows these interesting connections that we eventually put together. Game of Thrones have done it. They did it with The Walking Dead. They did it with I've got the series in my head.
Westworld?
Westworld, yeah. Westworld, and how they have these really intricate openers that, eventually by the last episode, it all makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't think this one was quite as compelling as the Game of Thrones one, which showed you the map and changed every episode. This one was interesting, but it's not one where I'm going to be desperate to watch it every week to try and work out where we are in the settings and get that sort of info. But it's also no surprise that it did give you those Game of Thrones Westworld vibes because it was made by the company Elastic, who made the Game of Thrones and Westworld openers.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty clear what they did there. And then we had the opening part of the game and the show, which is a very heavy 30 to 35 minute cold open, essentially.
Oh, yeah. It was a bit intense. I do like that they gave us a little bit of insight and more insight into the lives of Joel and Sarah prior to the event, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I really like the Adlers, and I like, you know, the banter between daughter and father. It was really cool to like kind of have that, but without the heartbreak, it would have been great. But then it wouldn't be The Last of Us.
No, it's all about the heartbreak in The Last of Us throughout the series. I did like that. Yeah, like you said, they gave us more info on their life pre-outbreak because it gives you a stronger connection to Sarah, which then makes that heartbreaking moment way more powerful. Like, it was already incredibly powerful in the game, but then I think because we get to spend those 15, 20 minutes with Sarah, just mundane, cooking breakfast, going to school, getting her dad's watch fixed by stealing it and stealing his money to fix his own watch, which was very good. And then
such a typical daughter thing to do.
I promised not to fall asleep. How could I fall asleep watching this movie 2 seconds later? Out cold.
Out. It was great. It was really, like you said, it built that connection and that appreciation for their relationship. So when we do lose Sarah, the shock was, and like I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was coming the way that it did. So
yeah,
because it is different to the game.
Slightly, it's quite close right up until then. Like we get the.
I wasn't expecting it that quick.
Yeah, we get the drive with the house on fire, the other family with their kid stuck on the road, and Joel refuses to stop.
Nope.
Even like when they get into the town and they're turning corners and just scrambling to try and get out of there and get stuck and have to chuck it in reverse. It was so similar to the games. Like, oh wow, this is legitimately terrifying. And even the way it was shot, where it was kind of from Sarah's perspective in the back of the truck, was like, oh yes, this is the game. Very well done.
It even felt like a video game. The cinematography of that scene. There was, you know, the dialogue from Tommy coming through, where he's like, "No, drive this way, go that way," and it's kind of like when you're doing that and you're driving a vehicle in a game, you have that exact same commentary, you know, telling you where to go, what you need to do. And from Sarah's POV and looking in the front of the windscreen, I was like, this is like sitting in a video game. It was insanely well done.
I also liked that they gave a reason for Joel not to be there when Sarah wakes up as well. Where in the game, we're kind of just with Sarah and Joel's not there. She's just home alone. You have no idea why. But they expanded on that lore and gave us a reason he had to go and bail Tommy out of jail after he got into a fight, which I assume was with one of the early infected.
Yeah, the way that he described it definitely sounds like it was part of the outbreak.
And then we get Sarah encountering her first infected as well. I loved that scene where she's picking the DVD and we see the grandmother in the background, like starting to twitch and turn, but not be able to get up just yet. And then later we see her running around like it's nothing, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that scene definitely tickled my horror bone because I was like, no, I'm out. There's zombies. I'm out of here. But I stuck around because, you know, got to find out what happens, right?
Yep. And I loved that the dog was picking up on there's something wrong with this old lady. And that's always scary as well, that animals kind of sense things before humans do.
I thought I might need to do a does the dog die in this? Because I was just like, no, I can't do this scene right now. If Mercy's gonna get killed, I'm out.
Yeah, well, they do leave that open. We kind of Mercy bolts and we never see her again. So
see you later. She's safe. as far as I'm concerned.
And I love that this show didn't rely on, like, there are a lot of nods to the game and a lot of scenes recreated, like we said, almost shot for shot from the game. But it doesn't rely on, like, in-your-face Easter eggs as well. Like, we get a scene where there's, like, a curtain blowing in the wind or there's dust drifting in the sunlight, which is, like, a reference to the menu screens of the game. But unless you have played the game, it's not like, that's a weird little thing to chuck in there.
It's a nice nod though, and having Druckmann work on it, he has clearly put in so much attention to detail to those fans that really love The Last of Us, who will go and they'll be able to sit there and really, hone in on the little nods that he's given to them as fans.
And like we said, we've just come out of a pandemic ourselves, but they've changed the lore a little bit here, which leading into this episode was the talk of the internet, of people being like, why are they getting rid of the spores? Why are they introducing these, like, tendril strands things that we see coming out of the old lady's mouth? What did you think of that change?
Because I knew that it was spores to begin with, because I went to a Christmas party for PlayStation one year, and there were lots of it was actually the PlayStation 20th anniversary party, and there was lots of The Last of Us stuff everywhere. And so I was asking the PR person, like, what's this, and what's that, and what's this, and what does this do? And so he was explaining all this stuff to me so that, I had a general gist of what was going on. And the fact that they've kind of put in these tendrils instead definitely leans more into, like, a horror element. Kind of gives me The Thing, The Void, if you've seen The Void, where there's these creatures that come out of human bodies, trying to get into other human bodies. And I think that really, builds heavier on this human connection thing, where the parasite or the fungus needs to move from one, host to another to keep on surviving. And it's just a really cool concept that they've gone with more of that horror, tendrils, and I'm trying to think of other movies that do similar things, but it definitely increases, like, the creepiness as well, because the way that they look, in the scene where one of the infected is chasing Joel while he's carrying Sarah, and how he's running and there's these things coming out of his mouth, and, like, that's far more scary than, like, spores coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a much more, like, icky, yuck vibe when, like, especially when the old lady opens her mouth and they start, like, squirming out like worms. It's like, oh, that's gross. But it also allows them to not have to cover Bella and Pedro's face in a gas mask for 60% of the game as well, which I think is good.
An entire video. An entire TV series. Yeah.
So yeah, I was initially hesitant about that change as well, but I think it pays off and works much better for the game, the show. We did mention that, like, you like the body horror stuff and gore factor. Thankfully, this show doesn't have too much of that, except for when they show Marlene's friend with the missing ear. I think that was, like, the goriest part. Like, oh, that's a bit gross.
Yeah, it's very bloody because there is lots of stabbing and biting, and so, like, my blood satisfactory level is 10 out of 10. Like, they did a pretty good job. It's realistic. Her missing her ear is gross. I have a real big thing for, like, body parts being bitten off. Like, it grosses me out. I recently went and saw Megan, and there's a scene where she, like, pulls this kid's ear off his face, and I was just like, oh no. Whoa. It did me in. I was like, nah. So, I think they've done a really great job. I don't know who their production team is for special effects and whatnot, but I'm sure they're very, very skilled at what they do, based on the stuff that we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. After the outbreak, we then jump forward 20 years, and instead of immediately jumping to Joel or Ellie, we jump to another random kid just walking through the scrub and the bush towards Boston, trying to get into the quarantine zone what did you think of that scene as well?
I can't believe that they would just do that.
Yeah, they hit you with
I can't
heavy
believe
after heavy immediately from the
oh,
outset.
constantly. It's just like you think this kid has found, this place of safety, and he's going to be just fine. And oh no, wrong, all wrong. And the fact that it feels like Fedra and its agents are just so desensitized to killing people that they're just like, oh, we're going to strap you in here, and you know what we're going to do after this? We're going to go get you your favorite food and all the toys you could possibly imagine, and then they kill him, and and then that in contrast to what the quarantine zone actually looks like in what she's telling him it's like is very interesting that they kind of like tried to soften the blow with him a little bit.
Yeah, they're very sneaky on like not telling you what they're really doing, where it introduces the testing scanners which flash red or green, which I thought was a really cool way to do that, which is another big change from the game. In the game, we learn that through playing as Joel, walking through the quarantine zone, and we see a group of people off to the side being tested. Someone tests positive and immediately gets shot in the street. Whereas this way is a little bit more clandestine, where they're testing this kid. They tell him, we've strapped you in because we don't want you falling out of the wheelchair. We're just going to do this little prick on your neck, and then we're going to give you some medicine. You're going to be fine. You get toys and food, and the medicine is actually killing this poor kid. And immediately then we finally jump over to Joel again and see him 20 years later, and he's tasked with burning the bodies and
the infected.
Very heavy to...
Which is kind of...
This guy's just lost his daughter. Well, just lost his daughter. 20 years ago, lost his daughter, and now he's desensitized as well. He's just burning children like it's nothing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's kind of weird because you see this horrible system they have set up where you've got to have a certain amount of cards to buy things, and there's like a barter system by the looks of it, and it feels very dystopian in that sense. But you can see already that the government has removed a lot of autonomy and democracy already in this quarantine zone, which is where we see, the Fireflies who are unsettled and, rebelling against this dictatorship that they have that's been established within the quarantine zone.
Yeah, it gives us that nice contrast with Fedra. Like, they're clearly trying to sort of keep sanity and some sort of normality in this zone, but they've also kind of taken it to the extreme where it's very militarized, and you do as you're told or you don't get food, essentially.
And the fact that Bella was also at the military school, there were other kids there. That these kids are groomed into the military. Where are we? So I think they've taken lots of elements from different parts of history, and even if Neil Druckmann did do this in the video game, which I guess I will find out, it's just, it's kind of interesting how they've implemented different things that we know exist out there in history and in, current times.
And another thing I noticed as we're moving through the quarantine zone, did you spot the two sort of amputees like sitting there pointing at things as well? Yeah. That made me question, perhaps did those two amputees like get bitten on the lower extremities? Because we see the sign that says it takes this much time for people to turn fully. Yeah. It makes me think, did these people like get bit on their like foot or wrist or something and immediately like cut their own arms and legs off to perhaps prevent turning?
Yeah, possibly. And I mean, they've done that in zombie movies before where, the rules are that you can cut something off. Ash did it in The Evil Dead. He cut his hand off. Not that did anything good for him, but... It just made me question, like, maybe Fedra have taken it to the extreme where as soon as somebody tests positive, they just kill them, when maybe if it's on an extremity, you could just cut the person's leg off at the knee and they'd be okay, but then that's also another mouth for them to feed, and because they're crippled, they probably can't work, so they can't earn their ration cards, so... Yeah, because there was quite a few also, like, with hand deformities and stuff, so Are they? That's the amputee she's talking about. The one that he had two hands that were, it just looked like he had two thumbs. So I'm assuming he cut his hand off.
Yeah.
Which I would do.
Yeah.
I would do if that.
If I got bit on the foot, I'd be trying. At least
I'll do whatever it takes.
take the leg off and hope, and then see how it goes from there. When we do finally get Joel and Ellie together, I love that they have that immediate sort of antagonistic relationship where Ellie, the first encounter with them is she's tackling him through a door and swearing at him, and I thought that was very well done.
It's really brilliant the way that they've established the dynamic between the two of them, because obviously she is still a teenager. She still, you know, hormones and animosity and, you know, being a teenager. But I love how he's standing on her knife and all she can do, eyes on the knife. She doesn't care about anything else. She wants that knife back. And he's, yeah, just that exchange between the two of them, it really does establish how interesting their journey across the states is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's been intentionally sort of worked that way, where they are immediately adversaries. So then as the show progresses and the story progresses, them coming together feels much more powerful and earned.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing how that antagonistic dynamic continues, because it's quite funny.
Yeah, like they go from being very angry, hostile towards each other, and then we sort of start to merge more towards a father-daughter bond as Ellie becomes his sort of surrogate daughter in place of Sarah, which again is another really deep story arc for Joel, having lost his only child 20 years prior.
Yeah, I feel like I cried when Sarah died. I'm going to cry when him and Ellie, their relationship deepens. I'm sold.
The show ends with them escaping the quarantine zone, which again had another little nod to the game, where when you escape the quarantine zone in the game, you have to go under the school bus and then through a tunnel, which they do in the show, which I thought was really cool. And then we end.
I got up to that bit.
Okay, so you got a bit further than I expected.
Yeah.
And then we end with the 80s song Never Let Me Down Again by Depeche Mode playing over the radio, which is, as Ellie came to know, an 80s song is bad, bad news.
Yeah. I do like that they brought that in as a nod to what Ellie said about, 80s music. But the entire soundtrack that they use throughout is really brilliant, from the actual composition of the soundtrack to additional songs they put in. Like at the start when Sarah's cooking breakfast, she's playing a song by Avril Lavigne, which was very 2003. Like perfect placement.
Yeah, especially for teen girl in that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that soundtrack part, I'm glad they brought in Gustavo Santaolalla, who was the composer of the game as well. So they have Neil guiding the show. Then they got in the original composer, so it has that same feel to the soundtrack as well, which I think is important, because the music in the game is a big part on setting the emotion and the tone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big sucker for soundtracks, so I do actually listen to the Last of Us soundtrack.
That's a depressing soundtrack.
Don't play the game, but I like the soundtrack. Oh, I'm an ex-classical musician, so this kind of stuff I absolutely adore.
Okay, that makes sense. Finally, as the show ends, on the end credits, we finally get a PlayStation and Naughty Dog logo on the final splash screen, which I thought was interesting, because in the lead up to this, they were kind of doing everything in their power to avoid promoting this as a game, like a game adaptation. They were kind of just like, from the creators of Chernobyl and this hit game. And it was like, they never like blatantly said PlayStation or Naughty Dog or anything in the pre-marketing. And then we finally get one at the final splash screen.
Yeah, I think, having Neil Druckmann attached to the project subject is so incredibly important for both PlayStation and Naughty Dog. And even though, you know, Craig Mazin had worked on Chernobyl, this entire series wouldn't even exist without Druckmann.
Mhm.
So it's maybe it was just a process of let's see if it takes off or not, and then we'll co-promote it. Let's
Yeah,
go.
I imagine they avoided that sort of game marketing tie-in purely because of like
Yeah.
the stigma of game adaptations to TV or movies from recent years. There's been
Yep.
some pretty dodgy
Yep.
ones.
We've just had that Resident Evil TV series.
How bad
that
was
came out
that?
that I will not watch.
Yeah, it was not good.
I mean, I have a few friends that really enjoyed it, and I was like, okay, cool. After like working on Resident Evil on the video games and stuff, I don't think I could do it a disservice and watch
Yeah,
it.
I think like it was a entertaining show, but I don't think it needed to be a Resident Evil show.
So
It could have just been generic
totally
zombies.
else. Oh, okay,
So,
fair enough.
okay,
Yep.
whatever. But then we had like The Witcher, which has been incredibly successful. The Cyberpunk Edge Runners, but then that's animated.
Yeah.
The Uncharted movie was entertaining, but also
I still need
weird
to
and
watch
wacky.
that. Yeah, it's got Tom Holland in it. What do you expect?
I think,
it's gonna
yeah,
be
the
weird.
problem with that one was the casting was bad, unlike this show where the casting is phenomenal. And they, instead of just sticking to like one game, where this show sticks to just The Last of Us Part 1, the Uncharted movie kind of pulls bits and pieces from all of the games and randomly jumbles them together. I was like, oh, no.
They could have just focused on
Yep.
one.
Just tell one
That's a movie in itself.
one straight story. That's all we need. We don't need bits and pieces from all.
Oh gosh. Yeah. No, this was definitely an incredible pickup by HBO. They definitely made the right decision in this
Yep,
one.
it's a fantastic first outing, I think, and 8 more episodes to go. Should be very good. I did read some random trivia. This is the largest television production in Canadian history. Filmed in Alberta, Canada from July 2021 until June of last year. They expect it to generate over 200 million Canadian dollars for the province of Alberta, which is pretty wild. That's a lot of money.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really cool. Some of the like incentives and stuff that they have for productions going overseas. Like Australia has some of its own. I know that Canada has quite a few. I had a friend who went and filmed one of her movies in Canada during the pandemic. So yeah, there's a lot of good reasons to go and film in Canada.
And then the budget for this show is allegedly between $10 and $15 million per episode. And I think that is showing in the quality of
Absolutely.
like the CG that we see with the infected, the set design, set dressing and everything. It looks phenomenal. But then $600,000 of that is going to Pedro every episode as well. So
That's not that much when you
when you look at $15 million.
Yeah.
And that budget is higher than the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones. So they never had that higher budget from the beginning. So I think that shows that HBO, PlayStation have a lot of faith in this show to exceed expectations and blow the TV world up.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Get more video games in TV. I don't want to speak too soon.
Well, so I can say that I've seen the whole season. So, yeah, you're in for a very fun ride. This first episode is an indication of how the show goes, and it's phenomenal right throughout.
Fantastic.
In terms of your rating for this debut episode of The Last of Us, what would you give this one out of 5?
Oh, absolutely 5. It was a cinematic experience, the same as what everyone says the game was. It went for an hour and
20.
Just under. I did have to pause it because I had to go change my car tire, but I came back and got straight back into it. And I have a really hard time concentrating on movies and TV shows because it has to suck me in. Otherwise, I'm on my phone playing like Candy Crush or something. But I managed to put my phone down for the entire episode, so that deserves a 5.
Yep. Yeah, I give this one a 5 as well. I thought it was phenomenal. That length is apparently a byproduct of the series as a whole was originally going to be 10 episodes, but then they cut this first episode from the first 2 and condensed it into one sort of not quite movie length episode, but yeah, I think that works better for the whole flow of the episode because we get, if it had been 2 40-minute episodes, we kind of really only would have got to the Sarah death and stopped there, and it would have been, you wouldn't have got the whole QZ, the actual world of The Last of Us if we'd stopped at that point.
Which is really important for, that foundational setup for people who haven't played The Last of Us.
Yeah, I think if they hadn't shown that, a lot of people might have not gone back for episode 2, so I think to condense this down into an hour 20, which is still quite long, but I think it works much better for the flow of the series and guides people towards it more. Yeah. So that's The Last of Us, episode 1, When You're Lost in the Darkness. Thank you everyone for listening to the commentary booth. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on podcast services and on YouTube. You can follow Kat on Instagram at kat.tgif or on her horror website, hearuscream.com. What can people expect to see over there in the next few weeks?
Oh gosh, we've just had our first author announcement because this year we started the Hear Us Scream Press. So we're a small, independently run horror book publishing company now. So we're about to announce our second author this week. So 2 very popular and brilliant names in horror. So looking forward to doing that. And after that, just reviews, editorials, got quite a few new writers coming on board, which is exciting. But yeah, that's just the usual from us.
Fantastic. Any sort of exciting movies that you're looking forward to in the horror realm this year?
Oh gosh, I just went and saw Megan. It was so freaking funny. Everyone go and see it. Even if you're not a horror fan, go and watch it. It is so much fun. But I'm looking forward to the Cabin in the Woods, which is actually an adaptation of Paul Tremblay's The Cabin at the End of the World. It stars David Bautista.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. It looks good.
I love him. And it's M. Night Shyamalan. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then, I'm not too sure. Some indie films. I'm looking forward to covering Sundance Film Festival, which is coming up, and Glasgow Fright Fest. So we'll be doing that this month and next month.
Very busy between all of that and then the book publishing as well.
And going back to work next week.
Jeez. Good luck.
Thanks.
So yeah, then you can follow me on social media at JamyUps Media and at Pario Magazine. Thank you for jumping on, Kat, and good luck with everything this year.
I appreciate it.
The Commentary Booth is a fan-funded production of JamyUps Media. You can support the podcast alongside our magazine, Pario Magazine, on Patreon at patreon.com/JamyUps Media. The following people supported at the publisher level or higher, and you cannot fathom how incredibly appreciative we are for their support.